This episode is brought to you by listeners like you. Find out how at patreon.com/stories from the trail. So here's, Chris, this is me doing an impression of you based on Google Voice's transcription of your voicemail. Actually, first I'm going to read it exactly as it's written, and then I'm going to read it as, as I think it is. Here, okay. Hey Gary, Drink Green Giant. This is now I have a trail name, Salon Reduced Myself Fast Turnaround. I'm also color number 1, by the way. So yeah, I'm putting in the periods in where Google Voice did. I was waiting. So it just continues on like that. So I know it's, Hey Gary, AKA Green Giant. This is Chris. I've got a trail name now. It's Turnaround. I'm also caller number 1, by the way. You're also caller number 2, by the way. So yeah, I was waiting to call you until I got a trip mean now that I have, until I got a trail name now that I have one. I thought I would share it with you. I'm in Harper's Ferry and just kind of hanging out here for the day. I'm in a hostel, and it's spelled it HOSTILE. You're in a hostile environment. I'd love to talk with you. Hear how you in trouble doing. And then it says, thanks, Chris.
Oh, turtle.
Oh, okay. That's probably right. Yeah, but now when I press play on this thing, I can actually hear it crystal clear in my ears.
Hey, Gary Green Giant. This is, I now have a trail name, so I'll introduce myself as Turnaround. I'm also caller number 1, by the way. So, yeah, I was waiting to call you until I got a trail name. Now that I have one, I thought I would share it with you. I'm in Harper's Ferry and just kind of hanging out here for the day. I'm in a hostel, and so I'd love to talk to you and hear how you and Turtle are doing. Thanks.
All right, and then we hear the voicemail. All right. Okay, thanks. Talk to you guys later. Bye, Chris. Click. Burp. So you remember Chris, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, for any listeners who might not have heard this before, Chris was our guest on episode number 9. Starting Tomorrow was the title of that episode. And Chris and I, you should probably go back and listen to episode number 9, but I'll give you a quick recap. Chris and I are old friends from back in the day when I used to be into kayaking. He was a river guide, and he called us the day before he started his AT hike back at the end of March. And you just heard in Chris's voicemail, he's in Harper's Ferry, and we've got him on the line right now. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
I'm doing great. How are y'all doing?
Phenomenal.
Phenomenal. Boop, boop, ba-doo-doo.
Phenomenal. Boop, 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 boop. Phenomenal. I can't go.
You can't.
I have to go all the way there. You can't stop in the middle of that.
You can't say the word phenomenal or phenomenon in any way and not have Megan start whistling and trumpeting.
Phenomena.
Sorry, we have to do this one more time.
It's in my head. It's stuck there. I'm never letting go of it. Thank you, PBS.
So, Chris, to answer your question honestly, how are we doing? We're doing just weird. Thank you.
So weird. So basically normal for us.
I almost missed our call, or I was almost late for it because I had about an hour before we were supposed to talk with each other, and the weather was still kind of cool here, and I've been in a yard work kind of mode lately, and we've got this dirt road that goes in front of the house. And after you turn into our driveway, the dirt road keeps going, and we've got the slope that's just uphill of it. And it's got all these gnarly bushes and thorns and trees and stuff that are sticking out in the road and scraping people's cars as they drive by. So Katie and I went out there with a handsaw and some pruners and just worked up a sweat. And I came in here and just changed my shirt, put some ice water on my head, and got down here under the blanket. So that's how I'm doing right now.
So basically what you're saying is that you might leave this call early because of your own stench underneath your blanket fort.
I'll tell you what, it's pretty incredible in here right now. It smells like probably not as bad as a thru hiker's pack, but it's pretty stinky in here.
Yeah, nothing smells as bad as a thru hiker's pack. Nothing.
Hey, Chris, how's your pack smell?
Speaking of smelly people, Chris.
Well, I thanks to Deuter, I have a brand new pack.
Ooh.
I was cruising along and my shoulder straps just kept loosening up. I would tighten them as tight as I could and it'd be a nice load to carry. And then about a half mile later, I had to tighten it back up again. So I just didn't know what to do. Maybe I could get new straps or something. And I called them up and they were like, hey, how about we send you a new pack? So I got one. And yeah, it's really super nice. It was very nice of them to get me a new backpack. So it's not too bad. And I tend to use the ultraviolet light, sunshine, dry it out as many times as I can kind of idea. And it doesn't, I'm sitting right next to it and I can't notice any smell. So.
But you also, you're at that point where you really don't notice that hiker funk in general, or do you?
I do. I actually bathe every day and try and keep my stuff clean just for that reason.
Wow.
I think hygiene is, I'm scared to death of something that I could control knocking me off the trail. So I try and keep it clean. And it's not too hard to do. I mean, if you ever, I know you in the Marines, you had to take a little sponge bath every once in a while just to make it happen. So
pour one canteen over your head now. Aye, sir.
No, I have a little bathtub thing that it's about the size. You can put both your feet in it. It's about that big, and it's like less than an ounce. And it has a couple of functions. I can use it to hold water. I can use it to carry water. If I have that half mile down to a spring, I ask all my friends, I'm like, anybody want me to carry back up water? And they hand me their sort of squeeze bags and things like that. And I can fit a ton of water in there. And it's got big, thick handles to carry. And then another thing is I take it at night. My fly is pretty dry, the little vestibule in front, but I put my shoes and then I put the bathtub over my shoes. And that way, if there's any water that bounces up inside it, I keep my shoes all wet.
Oh, that's really smart.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. Wet shoes are awful.
Wow.
Yeah, which leads me to that original call where I had asked Gary, I said, when you come to a stream, what's the deal? And now I think I have an answer that I think I should ask the question this way and say, if you were to watch thru hikers go across the stream, are they more like Labrador dogs where they just go in the water and splash each other and oh, it's so great? Or are they more cat-like where they're like, don't get my feet wet? And I'm going with their cat-like. They're totally like, don't want to get my feet wet.
Oh, cool. All right. And that's how
I've
you are now,
seen
too.
very few who are Labrador dogs. I found that most people, including myself, were cat-like.
Yeah.
Cat-like with rock hopping. A lot of rock hopping.
And if they call in, you're going to hear about it.
Oh, I know. I remember the one time I fell in. Like, I was crushed. I did so well at staying dry until I was just a few feet away and then slipped and bloop. There goes Megan's foot.
Oh, just your foot though? Like you didn't go completely in.
Oh no, it wasn't full body. It was just one foot. But I mean, that was enough to really tick me off, and I remember that. You don't want just one foot soggy and the other one dry. Like, what are you gonna do?
Do you remember Grafton Notch? You probably know it because it's in Maine and you're from there. Chris, you're gonna be doing that pretty soon. Grafton Notch is in the southernmost part of Maine. Anyway, there's about 7 miles of the AT there forms one edge of, I think it's the only loop trail hike in southern Maine, and it's called the Grafton Loop. And Katie and I tried that. I say tried. We attempted that loop for not 2 consecutive years, but we've gone up there and tried to do it twice. It's a 40-mile loop, the kind of thing that a thru hiker could probably knock out in 2 or 3 days. But, as weekenders, we went up there, hoping to do it in 4. And both times we used all 4 days just to do half of the loop and then gave up and walked across the road back up to Grafton Notch where the car was. But the whole reason I mention that is because there's a stream crossing there that the first time we attempted the Grafton Loop, it's the kind of stream crossing that you look at it and I could maybe with a running start jump over this. It was about, maybe, definitely deeper than knee deep, but, not too big, not too wide. And, I thought, okay, I could probably run and jump over this, but I don't want to do it with my pack on. So I'm going to take my pack off first and throw it across to the other side. And it's not that far. It's only like a 3-foot jump, maybe 4 feet. And I threw my pack and it just went like just nothing but net into the creek. just right in the middle. It didn't even bounce. Didn't even bounce off the other bank. It just went into the creek, and I went, "Oh fuck!" and jumped in after it.
Oh man!
And then threw it up on the other side. And that was when I learned that your down sleeping bag will be useless when it's wet.
Mm-hmm.
That was a hard life lesson. Fortunately, it was the pack was only in the water for a few seconds, and it was like just the feet and maybe like a little couple of patches on the sleeping bag got wet, but so it wasn't completely ruined. I hung it in a tree when we got to camp and tried to let the sun dry it out, but not even close. It was just wet and mushy the whole time. Ugh. But yeah, that's when I started to become extra cautious with creek crossings. Even the shallow ones. Yep.
Yeah, it took me all the way to Maine to learn that lesson, but oops.
Yeah, speaking of water, so Chris, you brought up your water and going and fetching water for other people, and I remember even the short amount of time that when we crossed paths on the Foothills Trail back then, we were just hanging out around breakfast time. You were going and getting water for everybody, and so you're still doing that.
Yeah, I ended up with a kind of a trail family, and we would split up chores when we got to camp, and especially some of the people who you just tell they were exhausted and they were kind of at the end of their day and stuff like that. And I think doing something nice for somebody who's that tired, when I'm that tired and somebody's like offers something, I'm just like, oh, thank you.
You're such a nice guy.
I really do appreciate it.
You're so nice. But your trail name wasn't Waterboy though.
No, wasn't Waterboy. I didn't have one in fact, you have you know who this is. Her name is Neville.
Oh,
and
yeah.
She is the owner of the Woods Hole Hostel.
Oh, I love Woods Hole Hostel, and I love Neville.
Yeah, it is a wonderful place to stay. And I ended up there, and when I first came in, she was like, "What's your trail name?" And I said, "I don't have one." And she had a particular look in her eye, and she's a very determined person, I could tell. She's like, "You will not leave here without a trail name." I'm like, "Okay." Wow. So when I left the next day after yoga, she's like, "Bye, Chris." so didn't pick one up. And then until I got to Shenandoah is where I actually received my trail name.
Which is?
Turnaround. I suppose I should tell the story of this. It all started back in Georgia where there were tons of people. And invariably, I would end up going southbound and not realize it. And I would come across people and be like, "Hey, how you doing? So I understand you're going southbound." And I'd be like, "No, we're going northbound." Oh. So about the second or third time it happened, I had a saving grace where I had been walking, and for some reason, I realized I had dropped my Snickers wrapper.
Oh, no.
So I turned around to go back to get it. And I ran into somebody, and they're like, "You going southbound?" I was like, "No, I dropped my Snickers wrapper." So from then on, when I did it accidentally, and I run into somebody rather embarrassing myself and saying, "Yeah, I got lost," I would just say, "Oh, I dropped something. I'm going back to get it." But then at the shelters, people would be like, "Oh, you're the one." And kind of people sort of figuring out that I tended to go the wrong way often. And there was one, I can't remember the name of it, but I came to a shelter, and it just had a sign that said shelter point 2. And I would write in my logbook the time I arrived. And I arrived there at 2:00 in the afternoon. After that, it's a beautiful climb to an overlook. I had lunch up there, and I ended up coming back to the shelter. I turned the wrong way at the top. And when I got there, this one I wasn't real happy about. I walked up and I went, "Is this the such and such shelter?" This woman was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Crap." Turned around and left. She runs into me a couple days later, and she's like, "What was that all about?" I'm like, "I keep going, southbound for some reason." And I know what it is. This is, and I'm if this happens to anyone else, this is what I was doing. Whenever I would go to a blue blaze and I would come back, I would usually forget if I turned right or left. And so I come out and scanning from left to right, I'm looking for a white blaze. And so I'm like, "Nope, not that trail, not that trail. Oh, there it is. There's a white blaze." And I would just go, not realizing that I was looking southbound. Yeah. And until I ran into somebody or something, I'd go, "I'm going the wrong way." So eventually, this story of me going south when I'm supposed to be going north, people heard about it. And the two people specifically their names are Laura and Christy, and they're section hikers. And they run into me and "Oh yeah, we heard about you," and so forth. And they go and start doing Shenandoah. So I I'm behind them, but I catch them at one of those Waysides, which are wonderful, by the way. And so as I walk up, they're like, oh, listen, we thought of a trail name for you, and we thought if we run into you, we're going to tell you your trail name and so forth. No sooner than she says that, and a family pulls up. Mom, dad, and a teenage girl. And they're like, we've caught you. And they're talking to me. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, I can't believe we just wanted to take a moment and tell you thank you for what you did. And I was like, okay. So here's the story. Earlier that day, as you know, the AT and Skyline Drive cross each other many times.
Yes.
And I'm on the AT, can't see anything, and a hiker comes up to me and says, hey, when you get to the next road crossing, it's kind of tricky. You go down and to the left to stay on the AT. Like, I got it. So I come to the road crossing, I turn down, I go to the left, I go 3.5 miles, and I come to an overlook, and it's got a map. So I walk up to the map, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh, I'm not even close to the AT. And this mom walks up with the family and stuff like that, and they're like, are you a thru hiker? You know how the stories go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so she's like, are you hiking AT? And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, I don't think we're anywhere near it. I'm like, I know. I did this. And I showed her on the map how I made the wrong turn. So she's super sweet. And she's like, well, we'll give you a ride. And I was like, I just looked at her and I said, no, I made the mistake. I have to pay for it. This is what's going to stop me from doing this. And I turned around and just walked back. And so when they caught me, they were like, that made such an impression on our teenage daughter that, you know, you made a mistake. You owned up to it and so forth. We just want to tell you thank you for all that stuff. Well, meanwhile, Laura and Christy are listening to the story, and they're like, we have got to tell you your trail name. We know it. And so they're like, you know this song, Turn Around Bright Eyes? I'm like, yeah, it's Bonnie Tyler, Total Eclipse of the Heart. And they're like, that's your name, Turn Around, because you always need to turn around. And I thought, okay, we'll just deal with this because, yeah, that one. And so sure enough, here's what happens. Your trail name, as Gary told me, he said, your trail name doesn't stick until you respond to it. So I'm hiking with them for several days, and they'll say something like, whatever I'm doing, and they'll go, turn around. And I think somebody's telling me, like, turn around, there's a bear, or turn around kind of thing. So I would turn and look. And after about 15 times, I'm like, okay, this is sticking. So that's my new, and I have to say, I bought gut hooks. $60, and it was the best investment, because now I stop and I go, all right, am I actually on the right trail? So since then, I don't get lost as often. I still sometimes find myself questioning whether I should go right or left, but at least now I have an electronic device that tells me.
But you're stuck with the name turnaround.
I think I am. And now that I'm flip-flopping, it's like perfect because I'm turning around and coming back south.
So what are the things that I want to offer as a hint that can help you when you're like what you said, you come off of the southbound or off of a blue blaze, or even when you're leaving the shelter in the morning and you see, you know, those white blazes and you can't remember which one is the northbound blaze and which one's the southbound blaze because they're the same color.
Yes.
The southbound blazes are actually painted upside down.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I am going to have to look more closely.
Chris,
oh, God.
I mean, turn around. So that's turn around. That's all one word, right? Like turn around. Like I'm going to pull in. Is it turn and then around?
I don't know. I didn't. It was verbal. So
okay. So I think it's the noun rather than the verb. Chris gets turned around so often when he gets to when he finishes his hike, they're going to give him the 4,000 miler patch.
I'd probably be pretty. My feet definitely are like, yeah, we got a lot further than 1,000 miles. That's for
sure. Hey, you mentioned the Waysides. How do you like those things? Tell us about.
Oh my God!
Tell people who don't know what the Waysides are. Tell people what that is.
Well, you've been hiking for a couple of 100 miles where getting to town is a big deal just because of the creature comforts that you can have. And so when you go into Shenandoah, you're hiking, it's very similar to the AT. It's very pretty. The animals are they really come up to you. And I suspect some of them may be fed. But all of a sudden, you go by like an open meadow area and you look and there's a store. And for me, it's cheeseburgers and ice cream. And it makes such a nice break. And the biggest thing in Shenandoah was that they had a ton of rain this spring, and there's a biting fly that a lot of people call gnats or no-see-ums, and they hurt and draw blood, and they were out by the billions. And if you stopped, within a minute or so, you get a couple buzzing around you. Within 5 minutes, everybody looks like they're doing the YMCA dance. And so when you got to the Waysides, the bugs were a lot less, which was great. And just to be able to sit in a chair and have a cheeseburger and ice cream for sure, was for me. It was, at that time, it was I really, really enjoyed it.
Oh,
So,
the ice cream at those places is amazing. They've got they make what is it? Is it black raspberry milkshakes or is it blackberry?
yes.
I think
The blackberry, and I think some people were talking about the blueberry ones also, although they seem to be out of those.
yeah, and that's all from berries that grow right there too, and like locally sourced ice cream and
So delicious.
Oh, so good. And in the pancakes, oh my God. Yeah.
Love me some breakfast food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll eat breakfast for every meal of the day.
So when you're going through the Shenandoahs, how many days did it take to get through? And did you see a lot of day hikers and tourists?
Well, we hit Shenandoah right about the time a big heat wave hit. And it was a lot of times you were just absolutely drenched wet by 9 a.m. So that kind of helped keep the most of the hikers, day hikers and section hikers kind of limited.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, definitely it was hot as all get out. So it slowed me down a lot. And I was hearing stories of hikers who were being taken to the hospital with heat problems, exhaustion and so forth. And I was hiking there was pretty much a group of 4 of us. And we all decided that we were just going to take our time going through this and spend 2 hours at the Waysides and things like that. So how long it took me, I don't really keep track of it. I'm going to guess maybe 5 days, 6, maybe more than that, maybe 6, 7 days.
Okay.
We were just having fun.
Yeah, the reason I asked how long is because I wondered if you were there over, like, to compare weekend traffic with weekday traffic.
Well, I was there actually over 4th of July. I mean, we watched the fireworks from that town kind of halfway up called Luray.
Oh, yeah.
We were up on an overlook that overlooked Luray, so I got to watch fireworks from 5,000 feet above them. Traffic was pretty limited. When you got to populated areas, you'd see more, the Waysides and that kind of area, you'd see people, but there weren't a whole lot. And when I got out of Shenandoah, that's where I really started noticing day hikers. And I would always do like, hey, where are you from? Washington area, Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And a number of Asian hikers who limited English, but I had so much fun trying to talk to them. Because it's like you can kind of, you have a kind of common communication of, hey, it's hot out here and that kind of stuff. But they're so colorfully dressed. They're just such a change of pace, and they smell so wonderful. Just to kind of hike behind them for a while, and you're like, you smell like flowers, which you can say to them because they don't speak English, and they're like, okay, thanks. It's like, oh, thank you.
You smell too. Thank you.
You smell so clean.
Oh, man.
Oh, my goodness. I remember being in the Shenandoahs and smelling someone, I swear, like a half mile before I came upon them. I remember that being something that happened because there were a lot of people in the Shenandoahs, a lot of really clean people in the Shenandoahs. And I remember smelling cologne. I swear it was at least a half mile, maybe even a mile before I came upon them. And it's very strange how your sense of smell is changed in that way when you're hiking.
Humans definitely announce themselves well before they arrive. Hey, Megan.
Hi, Gary.
Hey, how we always tell people a great way to support the show is by joining our Facebook group?
Yeah.
Well, we still want them to do that, but we also have that.
Of course.
And we still want them to do that, but we also have something even cooler now.
What's even cooler than our Facebook page?
Our Patreon page.
Ooh, tell me more.
Patreon is not just a way to support the show, it's also a community. It's got its own built-in community, but it also gives our patrons access to a special chat room that we're going to set up which lets people listen to us record the show live and in real time while it's happening. Or wait, there's more. You ready for this, Megan? They also will have the ability to ask questions to not only us, but our guests while we are recording. They get to be a part of the show. How awesome is that?
So cool.
It's just like, see, that's how it works, Megan. Like, I'll do 47 shitty takes, and then in the middle of thinking about something else, it'll just, and it comes out. We were talking about how humans announce themselves kind of before they show up, and that reminded me of something that I picked up on. Probably about the same, about right where you are now, Chris. About halfway through the hike, it started to dawn on me that the birds and the animals and the sounds that they make as you're hiking are noticeably different than the sounds they make, after you sit and remain quiet for a few minutes. And and I think it's because so birds. We'll just do birds in general, because that's what I know more about. I don't know much about chipmunks and mammals, but birds have two sets of calls. Generally, they have their alarm call and then they have their song call. And the alarm call is usually very high pitched and short duration, almost like the chirp that your smoke detector makes when the battery runs out. It just kind of goes, pick, pick, and you can't figure out what the hell goddamn room it's in. And that's because it's a high frequency sound. Short duration is easy to hear but hard to locate, which is exactly what you want if you're concerned about predators. So, birds make these high-pitched chirping sounds when something is approaching, i.e. you and your footsteps. So as you're walking, you're kind of going through a treadmill of alarmed birds. So you're hearing a lot of, like high-pitched chirping and squeaking, while you're walking, because you're disturbing them. And then once you sit, like at a water stop or when you're having lunch, you're not making a lot of noise anymore. You're not disturbing the birds, and they kind of settle down and actually, they have bird brains. They forget that you're there, and that's when they start singing. So that's when you'll get your like all the whistle and long duration, lower pitched stuff comes out when you're quiet, or when you're quiet and sit and listen. So, I don't know. That was just something I kind of nerded out on when I noticed it. I just thought I'd share.
You get to nerd out on those things, and it's so fascinating, Gary, because I learned so much from you when we hike or hang out, I guess.
Most of it's stuff that I picked up from David Attenborough, and I just paraphrase. I'm sure I'm getting a lot of it wrong, too.
Well, sounds right to me. I'm going to run with it.
Hey, Chris, I wanted to ask you another question. When we were talking about trail days, and you mentioned your trail family, I want to hear more about about the people you're hiking with.
Well, I started off in Georgia, and day one, not even to Springer yet, I met a gentleman from Australia, and his hiking partner she's from Germany. And they had met coming to, I think, Atlanta. And so I met them on day one, and then we kind of split up and then started hiking, I think, Trey Mountain, from there all the way to almost Irwin. There was the three of us, and then we picked up people along the way. So we ended up with the international group. We had Little Engine. She's from Germany. She's a physician, 26 years old, and has a body fat of 0.0001%. And she and I hike about the same speed. So all through the really tough climbs and stuff like that, I like to follow her, because I felt like she really just pulled me up those mountains. As long as I stayed with her, I'd be at the top of the mountain before I knew it. A gentleman from Australia, he gets the trail name Drop Bear.
Oh, because there's a totally real.
Megan, I got to tell you, this guy he has the most brilliant blue eyes with like really long dark eyelashes. Just a really extremely good looking guy. And,
some eyes you could get lost in.
Yes, and
and he's Australian too.
Australian, yeah. And then we hooked up with she's from England. She's an accountant and is now going to be a world traveler. She's going to do the 18, and she's going to go to New Zealand. And
so cool.
At the time when I met her, I was listening to my music, and a song by Genesis is called Duchess, which I believe is about Princess Diana. And so I named her Duchess, and it's still stuck. I just saw her in
cool.
Harper's Ferry, and she is she is the toughest person I think I've ever met. She doesn't quit. And she has been through so much. I mean, wounds and blisters, and just puts her head down and she just hikes and hikes and hikes. And then we ended up picking up a gentleman from Florida, which we trail named him Chainsaw.
Oh.
Why?
He could snore like you would not believe.
There's always one.
And then,
that's funny.
a gentleman from Canada, Nick, who didn't have a trail name for a while, but then one day we were at a shelter, and Chainsaw offers me some gummy bears. And you know how you don't want to touch anything and so forth. Well, it ended up I had just cleaned my hands, and so I had one, and Nick is like, "Oh, I want one." And so I was trying to hand it to him. He's like, he just opens his mouth, and I just put it in his mouth. Someone else goes, "That's your name from now on, you're Baby Bird." So now Nick is Baby Bird. And then
there weren't air quotes around that gummy, were there? Those are just regular gummy bears. I
think they were sour. They were called Sour Patch Gummies. If that's
Megan, that's your jam right there.
Oh, that's my jam right there. Sour candies. I love me some sour candies when I'm hiking.
So Drop Bear had to get off after
crew of
that.
people.
Oh, yeah, and it's been I've met more people that we've kind of come in. One named Moxie, she's from Michigan, and she's about my age, and she's another really, really tough person. Just doesn't quit. You can tell she's hurting, and she's like, I'm not. I'm like, okay.
Us ladies are badasses, just saying.
We probably hiked 400 or 500 miles together. So I was looking through my pictures of all, I crossed the mile markers that say like 300, 400, 500, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, usually I'm with her whenever I come across one of those, and we kind of photograph each other at them.
You started with a friend of yours who was going by Durango. What happened to Durango?
He didn't. I just honestly, day one, we did the approach trail to Amicalola, which I highly recommend. It's beautiful. I didn't realize that when the trail goes across the front of the waterfall, I had never seen a waterfall actually look like it was falling in my lap. That kind of angle.
You can touch it, just lean over that rail and just grab you some falls.
So I am definitely do the approach trail. When he got to the shelter, which is about 1.3 miles from Springer, it wasn't what he thought it was. He was not having a good time. He made it a few more days, but he after less than a week, he was just like, I'm not enjoying this. I'm going to go ahead and get off.
Yeah.
So,
well, you're not feeling it. You don't want to force it.
No,
never force it.
It has a lifestyle to it that if you don't like it, then why force yourself to be miserable? So.
Exactly.
Hey,
speaking of being miserable, how's your hip holding up?
Hip is good. I've been pretty slow, so I just hike for fun, and then when my body is like, okay, I think we had enough, it's like I just pull over and stop.
Yeah, quick reminder, what I'm referring to is Chris had his hip replaced a year and a half?
Yeah, a little over a year. Well, it's going to be, it'll be 2 years in December.
Okay.
So a year and a half sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned it on our last call, and I just wondered how that was doing.
Yeah, it's good. I'm so glad. If there's one thing I would recommend for everyone would be to do yoga. Moxie and I were joking about making a video called, yoga for the trail, like downward dog getting in your tent.
I love that.
Yeah. No downward dog allowed in Baxter. Because there's no dogs. Never mind. No downward dog in the Smokies? Does that work? I don't know. Maybe I won't use that one.
Just keep workshopping it, Gary. You'll get there.
Is this thing on? But for real though, yoga is great. Even if you're not a hiker, just in your, I'm going to go all big time Asheville granola crunchy on you here. It's useful for just every aspect of your daily life too. It forces you to focus and slow down. At the end of the day, you can use it to relax. You can use it to strengthen. You can use it to stretch. There's so many different ways to do it. The first time I ever really did yoga was at Woods Hole Hostel at one of those circles that Neville leads in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time you ever did yoga?
The first time I ever did yoga. I always thought it was,
wow. How many years have you lived in Asheville?
Seriously.
Get him, Megan, get him.
Yeah, Asheville's the only place in the world where you see a pickup truck driving down the road with a gun rack and a Namaste sticker.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of yoga as well. I don't do it as much as I used to. But I think that it helped me. So I did a lot of yoga when I was training before going on my thru hike. And I think that the balance and control that yoga teaches you with your muscles really helped me with stability and carrying a lot of weight on my back. Because it's one thing to be really strong and have strong muscles. It's another thing to have control over those muscles. So yoga really helps with the control aspect of that.
Oh, it's
and
true.
Preventing injuries, that sort of thing. And that's kind of semi-backed by my physical therapist. So look, there's some credentials behind it, even though they're not mine.
And the balance is, like you said, that balance is so important. I got so much better at rock hopping or just not falling on my ass in the trail after, it's good stuff.
Yep. Definitely worth it.
All right. So we yoga makes me think about vegetables, which.
Why is that?
Well, because a lot of people who are into yoga are vegans or vegetarians or whatever. There's that connection, at least around here. Diet is all generally, it seems.
There's the crunchy granola tie-in.
It is, yeah. And that got me thinking about, my mind thinks in leaps. So I'm thinking about yoga. I'm thinking about vegetables. That reminds me of spinach, which reminds me of something that Chris said on our last call where he was talking about, we were talking about nutrition. And I think you suggested getting those little salad-sized packages of spinach and taking it with you on your resupply on your way out of town to have one more day's worth of vegetables. And I wonder if you're doing that or something like that.
Yeah, actually, and I graze along the trail. There, a gentleman introduced me to violet leaves, and
violet leaves.
When I'm walking down the trail,
the leaves of violet flowers. They're edible.
Ooh, they're so good. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I try not to take all of them. I try to just take one or two from a particular plant. But what happens is that when the rain falls, they're very low to the ground. They get kind of a little dirt on them. So when people see me, the front of my shirt has a dirt spot right where my stomach is because I wipe the dirt off and then I eat it.
So you just graze as you're moving. It's not like you're harvesting and then cooking.
Yeah, he harvests. He had a little bag that he would pick things and stuff like that. So I struck up a conversation like, "What are you picking?" And he showed me different things. And the violet leaves are by far my favorite. And you can take them especially if I stop for lunch and I see a pile of them, I'll take them. And you take a little tuna fish and roll it up like a little wrap. And it's so good.
See now, I've been eating the petals, so I guess I've been doing it wrong.
Maybe both of those things are edible. Guys.
And I'm not making a joke either. Our friend Barb told us that the petals of the violet are edible, and I've plucked a few of those and eaten them too. And she even put them in a salad that she made at one of our picnics that we had together.
Oh, I bet that made it pretty.
Yeah. So I guess the whole thing, right? I mean, what about the stems? Can you eat that?
Yeah. Usually the stems kind of the leaf is maybe a big one would be the size of your palm. So the stem would be maybe about the length of your finger. And so I eat stem and all.
Okay. Well,
what about milkweed? Have you been eating any milkweed?
I see it occasionally, but there's something whenever I see it, I always think about the bees and the pollinators, and I'm like, I think I'm going to leave it for them.
Well, I ate a little bit. I was not as nice to the bees, and I ate some when I was through hiking. And I have to admit, I was out for a run yesterday, and I saw some milkweed on the side of the road, and I was like, "Ooh, that looks tasty."
You didn't stop and eat it.
I didn't stop and take side of the road milkweed because I'm a muggle now. I live in the real world. I can buy vegetables at the store. I can do that, or I can pick milkweed from my own property instead of someone else's. But it reminded me of having milkweed and the cheddar broccoli pasta sides with a packet of tuna.
Oh my God, that sounds great.
It's amazing. It's like a tuna noodle baked type of thing. And the milkweed just added some veggies to it, more veggies. But it was substantial. because you don't have to pick too many to have a substantial handful of milkweed in your hand, because they're a larger plant.
I just want to point out the irony that you just referred to yourself as a muggle Voldemort.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I've been noticing more and more people using the term muggle to describe their off-trail life. And so I picked it up maybe just, I think, last or 2 weeks ago when I was up in the Whites. And I was like, oh, I should use this because it kind of fits well with the whole Voldemort thing. So,
okay.
Yeah. Right. So that's my new, instead of saying in the real world, I'm going to start saying, in my muggle life.
Okay.
As my non-trail life.
I like
my
it.
New thing.
Yeah.
It's not my new thing. I may have stolen it from other people, but it's what I'm saying now.
Okay. But now,
I do declare.
This is your thing now. You've coined a term. Congratulations.
Well, anybody can use it, but I'm going to use it. So
you're going to popularize it. You're going to use your newfound fame and power to influence the very language we speak, Megan. That's how much of an influencer. So much
fame and power.
So much fame. So much power. What is our Megan? Chris, Megan just started running our Instagram account for the show. Speaking of fame and power, and what's our reach now? We only
have one post, so I'll be working on doing another one. I don't know what to do, so if anybody has ideas, please let me know because I don't know what I'm doing. But our Instagram handle is, well, I guess it starts with at SFTT show. So it's stories from the trail show. SFTT show.
And do we have 10,000 followers yet?
One post, 10,000 followers. Way to go.
We have a full 61 followers.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah, and it's only been up for a few days. So
Can you do video?
5 days exactly. So 10 followers a day. Woo!
Hey, that's a lot of people if you put them all in one shuttle vehicle.
It's a lot of people to get from point A to point B. It's a lot of people for yellow blazing. So we're gonna call it popular.
All right, cool.
Can you post video?
I think Instagram has a way of doing video, but again, I'm new to Instagram, so I'm still learning. I think there's a way.
You can.
But what do you? Okay, so then what do you recommend we post as a video?
Well, I had a story to go along with Gary's bird story.
Oh.
I had made it a long way without seeing a bear, and so if you know where McAfee's Knob is, there's a parking area on a kind of a main road where everybody, the day hikers park, and then they go uphill to McAfee's Knob. Yep. So I'm pretty close to that, so I'm trying to give you where I am, but I am south of that by a mile or two. So I stop, and there's this overlook, and I'm just having lunch, and all of a sudden I hear something. And I'm like, what on earth is that? And it sounded to me like digging. And so it was one of these things where I just leaned back a little bit, and I'm looking down the trail, and there's a bear, and she's digging at an anthill. And I grab my camera and kind of lean back, and so I'm maybe a foot off the ground and videotaping her. And the wind changes, and you can see all of a sudden she smelled me, but she can't see me. And she's kind of turning around and stuff like that. And then as you watch the video, she has cubs. And I always wondered, how does a bear talk to her cubs? And if you look, I'm not sure, but I think she kind of like looks up the tree, and the cub, he goes from the ground to like 4 feet to out of the frame in like a second.
Whoa.
And they
I was like,
trees fast.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so she's worried about something. And I thought, well, I better not stand up because that would probably freak her out. So I just kind of leaned forward a little bit and was out of sight, out of mind, and then kind of leaned back, and she called the cub down and then wandered off. But that was my bear encounter. So I got it on video if you want to see it.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, we'd love to see that.
That would be cool. Yeah.
I'll send it to you.
I'm always terrified whenever I see a cub or a mom with cubs. The scariest bear encounters ever.
Yeah.
Well,
apparently there was something that went on in Grayson Highlands where I was already through it, but the word came out that they closed the park, and was trying to find information. And the hiker rumor mill was that there was a bear encounter with a woman there, and never was able to find out exactly what happened. The rumors were pretty wild.
Oh, that reminds me, I've got a video of a bear on my phone from when I hiked the trail of a mother bear, false charging me with 3 cubs behind her. I've got it on video. There's a lot of expletives in it. Because I was like, if I'm dying, I'm getting this shit on videotape. But there were, as soon as she started running towards me, I was like, there was a lot of things that maybe my mom doesn't want to hear come out of my mouth. But I've got that video somewhere. It's probably really low quality because, it was 4 years ago and technology's changed so much in 4 years. But we should do some bear postings.
Well, how about, let's do this. If Megan, if you can find that, put it on our Instagram, share your bear videos at SFTT show on Instagram. And Chris, do you want to put yours on our Facebook page?
I would love to, but I don't know how.
Oh, okay.
Man.
Oh, okay. Well,
I don't know either.
So you're in our Facebook group. I added you. So the Facebook group is called Stories from the Trail. And just go there and click new post and choose upload photo or video and just pick that from your phone.
Oh, well, that sounds easy enough.
It's easy. It's actually easier than emailing it to us.
Perfect.
Yeah, because it's probably a big file and, Gmail or whatever.
Oh, yeah, the quality would probably be compressed, sort of thing.
Yeah, it'll either compress it or say, this is too big, too sand, bleep, blorp. That's my computer voice.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Let's see some bear videos. I've got one on my YouTube channel. If you find Gary Sizer on YouTube, there's a video there that Dingo and Hungry Horse and I shot at.
Yeah,
we shot the video. We didn't shoot the bear. We shot the video at the Brink Road Shelter in New Jersey of actual footage of a bear stepping into a bear trap and getting caught.
I have seen this video.
Yeah.
In fact, I tell people the story of your video. When we were in Shenandoah at one of the picnic areas, they have a bear trap like that. I don't think it's as big as the one in your video, but it's the same thing, kind of a cylinder with a door. The door's different.
Yeah, for people who are trying
what is this thing?
Visualize.
I'm like, I know what it is.
If people are trying to visualize, they hear bear trap and immediately think of like the big metal jaws that Wile E. Coyote
a foot trap
tries to catch the roadrunner. It's like the have a heart traps that you would use to catch a raccoon, only it's the size of a minivan. All right, so Chris, when you called yesterday or just a couple of days ago, you were calling from Harper's Ferry. We tried to talk yesterday, but we couldn't because you were at the airport, and that's because you're not in Harper's Ferry anymore. Why don't you tell us where you are and what your plan is?
I made it to Harper's Ferry, and it's about 1,000 miles, and it took me about 100 days. So I'm averaging 10 miles a day with all my zeros that I like to take.
Nothing wrong with that.
So I'm from Florida, and I did cold weather, and I think I just don't want to experience it. Mostly, I really want to go swim in some of those lakes in Maine.
Yeah.
And enjoy them.
Yeah.
And so the idea of flip-flopping kind of came into my head, and a gentleman by the name of Jeremy put a posting on Facebook saying that he was going to drive to Katahdin, and did anybody need a ride? And this was right when I was thinking about doing the flip-flop, and I went, oh my goodness, this is perfect.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. And so I was like, yeah, I would love to have a ride up there. And he's like, okay, great. So he's going to pick me up on Saturday, and we're going to drive to Maine, camp that night. And then on Sunday, he's going to drive me to I think it's called the Appalachian Trail Lodge, which is close to Baxter. And so it kind of answered my question. And I decided that going as slow as I am, I can take my time coming south. And as the weather is turning colder, I'm moving further and further away from it. And I think psychologically, knowing all my family's in the South, I think that idea of kind of going towards them makes sense.
Walking home.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with hiking home. It's a great motivator.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to it. A week from today, I should be near Baxter, and I'm going to climb Katahdin on Monday.
Oh,
wow.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then from there, I'm going south. I don't know if you saw, but the gentleman's trying to do the oldest person on the trail. He just climbed Katahdin on Friday.
Pappy.
Happy, yeah.
Happy, yeah. So I imagine I'll be just a little bit behind him, and I'm looking forward to it. I have never been north of Harper's Ferry. All that area, I've never seen it. And you were talking about the birds and the different sounds and the different. It's going to be an experience.
Oh, this is so exciting.
Oh yeah. Oh.
So when you come into New Hampshire, I'd love to come up there and see how everything's going.
Awesome.
Yeah. How many miles are in Maine again? Someone want to remind me?
It's just under 300, I think.
300? Okay. So 300-ish miles.
Yeah, that'll probably take me about a month.
I'm not going anywhere anytime soon.
All right. So you're doing Katahdin on Monday. What's your plan for the 100-mile?
I like to talk to people and sort of pick their brains and go, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? I've heard now that there's a drop off that they can do kind of halfway, sort of food drop. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny. I decided to test it. I needed 100 miles of trail where I could pick my food and see if I can go 100 miles on the food that I have. So I picked Shenandoah, which was really stupid. I'm so heavy going into Shenandoah, but I'm like, I'm going to see if I can make it all the way to Front Royal with the food I have. Of course, 2 days in, I'm eating cheeseburgers and ice cream.
Wow.
This is perfect.
Turn around.
Waysides.
Turn around. Just tried to Daratisima the Shenandoahs. I'm going through the whole thing without accepting any milkshakes from anyone.
Yeah, good luck.
Didn't work. So I never got hiker hunger. My trail family for sure. They 3 days out, they start talking about food and what they're going to have and so forth. And I haven't done an all you can eat. I'm actually eating regular sized meals. I think I'm scared of getting sick of eating too much and then like throwing up, almost feeling.
I think you're not getting the hiker hunger because of a combination of your pace and your good nutrition. You're getting plenty of greens while you hike. I mean, sure, you're foraging, but that's, more than these 0 greens that most people get. That and averaging 10 miles a day. Yeah, you might.
When the only green you're getting comes from like Sour Patch Kids or, there might be a slight difference in the nutritional value of 2,000 calories that I eat and 2,000 calories that you eat on the trail.
That's
saying.
The only greens, it's the only orange, it's the only red, it's the only yellow.
Yeah.
It's the only, what color? What the hell color is this one? Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that'd be cool if you guys had a chance to meet up when Chris is in New Hampshire. Speaking of, so not New Hampshire, but when you get to Connecticut, that's where Hudson's place is, right? Connecticut?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Bearded Woods Bunk and Dine.
Yeah, I want to recommend that you stay at that hostel if you can.
For sure.
Yeah, and that is Hudson and Big Lou's. What do they call it? It's
Bearded Woods Bunk and Dine, or maybe they changed the name in the past couple of years.
There's an adjective in there, and I'm forgetting. It's like Bearded Woods, like uncanny bunk and dine, or unusual. It's some word.
One
that
of
means
a kind bunk and dine.
That's it. That's it. It's
Bearded Woods Bunk and Dine, or one of a kind bunk and dine.
Yeah, you got to stay at that place. Hudson and Lou
in Sharon, Connecticut.
They're great people.
They really are. They're phenomenal people. I had an injury and they took me in. They're phenomenal. I can't believe I haven't been back in a couple years. I try to go back and see everybody every now and then. So now I guess I have to go down and see them. It's recorded. I've got to go see them in the next couple weeks.
Yep.
And then I can interview them.
Oh, okay.
Which probably ask first.
Yeah. One of the reasons I like that place is because, how a lot of the hostels along the trail turn around. Maybe you're seeing this. We'll have like kind of an a la carte menu. You can pay $2 if you want laundry. You can pay an extra $1 if you want the big breakfast, or you know what I mean? They have kind of a menu there. At Hudson's place, it's one flat fee. I don't know what he's charging this year, but it's just an all or nothing package. So everybody gets laundry, everybody gets breakfast. They limit their capacity to, I think it's either 8 or 12 people, and everybody eats at the table together a dinner that they've prepared.
And it's important to note that Big Lou's cooking is amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
For 4 to 5 star restaurant quality, you know,
Wow.
super nutritious and delicious. And, you know, you get to hang out and help cook. It's a very
And
communal
also,
experience.
it's a nice hostel too. Let's also just say that it's not, you know, it's not a shack held together.
Yeah.
Like it's a really nice place. Like I would recommend it to people who are not through hiking too. I don't know if I assume that they would probably take in someone who's not through hiking. I don't think they're exclusively a through hiker hostel, but you know, people in the real world who are, you know, out there for a weekend or a week or something, who want nicer accommodations than your typical hostel. Definitely, I would recommend them.
Hudson is a skilled carpenter. He built the place with his own bare hands. Well, I'm sure he used some tools too, but he's also a thru hiker. He thru hiked the trail the year that we met him while also running the hostel. So
yes,
he began his northbound hike in January, I think, and hiked all the way as far as he could get by Memorial Day, got off trail, ran his hostel right up until the end of hiking season, like 2 weeks before October, and then got back on the trail and finished like a day or so ahead of you, Megan, right?
Yeah, he actually he did a shakedown for me when I was in Connecticut, so I had a schedule so I could try to catch him, and I almost did.
I guess it'd be a day ahead of us since we finished on the same day, but you know what I mean.
Yes, yeah.
All right.
Yep.
All right, that's enough free advertising for Hudson's one-of-a-kind bunking dine. Hudson, if you're...
Can I say one more thing?
Go ahead. Yeah, sure.
So when he started his thru hike in January, he started off with a like olive green osprey pack, and then after the hot hiker season, when he went back out, he got I believe it was a hyperlight mountain gear pack. So I'm really plugging all of the gear companies right now. But he got this. It was a Cuban fiber pack, and it was really awesome. And he didn't have any. He just left the osprey at home. Well, as you might know, my pack was stolen in Hanover, New Hampshire, and I didn't have anything. And he brought that pack up, or Big Lou brought that pack up from the hostel. So I finished with the pack that Hudson started his thru hike with. So despite the fact that he got rid of it, you know, when he went to run the hostel, that pack did the thru hike the whole Appalachian Trail.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love the generosity. That I was thinking the other day on the trail, the amount of grace that I have received is so spiritually uplifting that it is amazing how nice people have been. I just want to tell one quick story. Moxie and I were hiking in Virginia, and we got to a bridge that went over a creek, and we had stopped there to have lunch, and it just started monsooning rain and just bucketing down. And this gentleman just pulls up just as the rain starts to lighten up, and we're just soaking wet. And he's like, "Is y'all like arrived?" And we were like, "Yes."
Yes.
Yeah. And things like that just happen. Those things are regularly happen where people will offer you something. My stove broke, and a hiker I was with, Christy, is like, "Listen, I'm not going to use my stove anymore. Would you like mine?" So I'm always amazed at how gracious the people are on the trail.
So amazing. It's so amazing.
Speaking of trail angels and trail magic, have you encountered Miss Janet yet?
I saw her once. Now, I did the hiker Thanksgiving with her in Hot Springs, so I had met her there and knew who she was. And at one of the gaps in Georgia, she was there in her van, and I just went up and said hi, and that was it. I have been kind of behind the bubble most of the time, so she's been further along the trail, so I haven't seen her since then.
I think you'll probably end up running into her because she is, you know, now that you're headed southbound, you're bound to run into her. And she, I think, is in like Massachusetts.
I think that's where I saw her last. Yeah. Tracking her on the Miss Janet cam. We've got radar set up here at Stories from the Trail headquarters.
When I saw Miss Janet, last time I put a tracker on her. So, you know, we know where Miss Janet is at all times.
Got a collar and ear tags.
She's being relocated due to aggressive behavior. No. I was picturing.
I didn't know.
You put a tracker on. I was picturing like you tagging her ear. And sorry.
Oh boy. Sorry, Chris. What is it you didn't know?
I did not realize one of the first people I ever met. This was 20 years ago. I met a guy at NOC. I was there to go paddling, and there was this gentleman sort of pacing outside the store waiting for it to open. And I struck up a conversation with him. And I was like, so what's your name? And he says, Baltimore Jack. Although I'm not from Baltimore, my name's not Jack. And I didn't realize until I actually got into this that he was actually famous. And he spent probably an hour telling me stories. And this was, he had attempted a thru hike and hadn't made it. And he was on his next attempt. And then I met Miss Janet, and I stayed at the Baltimore Jack hostel in Franklin. And I didn't realize that those two knew each other. And so it kind of became this like, oh, it is such a small world when you talk about the people on the trail.
Oh, yeah. Miss Janet and Baltimore Jack were like brother and sister.
They're wonderful, wonderful people. Someday I'll have to tell my full Stolen Pack story, which includes both of those people.
I think we should do a whole episode of just Baltimore Jack stories and get people together who remember.
I love that idea.
Remember this guy. For people listening who don't know who we're talking about, Baltimore Jack has been a trail legend, or I guess I should say had been, because he passed last year, I think.
Yes,
in the spring.
Yeah.
But Jack was, definitely a trail legend. I think his official count was 9.5 thru hikes. And just like Turnaround was describing to us, he's the kind of guy who would just sit and talk with you for an hour and just give you so much good advice and encouragement and, just a real positive influence on the trail. Just a great guy.
He really was.
Yeah, we should talk about him sometime at length.
Definitely.
Oh, man, there's so much more I want to talk about at length, but, we're kind of running out of time here. Chris, best of luck to you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your, transition in the middle of your flip-flop to call us. We always love hearing from you.
Well, I'm honored, and it was my pleasure.
Cool. I'm glad that you and Megan finally got to meet because you missed her last time.
Yeah. And awesome. Maybe I'll come hunt you down in the New Hampshire or Maine wilderness.
Sounds awesome.
All right, before
that
we
sounds
go,
a little creepy when I say it that way. I don't mean it to be creepy.
All right, so before we go, a couple of quick housekeeping things that I want to go over with, and Chris, feel free to chime in on any of this stuff. So with our last episode, we announced that we just started our Patreon, and that is already doing all right. So at patreon.com/stories from the trail is where we're asking people to go now to help support the show. And for as little as $1, you can help not only make sure that we keep making the show and bringing it to you, but that we can make it better each time. So people are already helping out there. There are other things that I don't want to go into too much of it here on the show. Go check out the page because there are descriptions of what all the different the different levels are that you can join and support at. There are different, I guess not prizes, but things that you get in return. So it's not just you throwing money at us. You get
perks.
Yeah, perks.
Call them perks.
Perks. Bonus content, access to, stories and videos that aren't going to make it onto the air, things that are just for our patrons. We're setting up we're gradually getting enough people together to set up a chat room so that we can have, sort of a live audience while we're recording the show in future episodes. And that's going to be for patrons only. Again, for as little as $1, you get to help us and actually be a part of the show. That's storiesfromthetrail.com. Oh, I'm sorry. That's patreon.com/storiesfromthetrail. The other thing I wanted to talk about was on the last show. Hang on a second. I need a little bit of water. Getting a dry mouth. I got dehydrated before recording.
I'm still drinking hot coffee. So,
oh my goodness.
No,
it's 90 degrees here. No one wants coffee.
My AC is off because we're recording and I don't want the background noise. So I'm sitting here sweating, drinking hot coffee. But if you think for 1 minute I'm going to put my coffee down, you are so wrong.
I'd like to talk a little bit just about how the show's doing in general, just to kind of, keep people informed. People who are listening to the show right now are getting in on the ground level of something amazing because we are blowing up. We're worldwide. I mentioned this on our last episode that we have listeners in all sorts of countries.
That is so exciting.
We've got a few thousand people listening here in the States, Canada, the UK, most of the English-speaking places, as you would imagine. But there's a long list of countries where we have just a single listener in each country. And I want to say hi. There's a whole list here, and I'm not going to do them all, but I just want to randomly say hello to our one listener in Cambodia.
Woo!
Yep. We've got one listener in Nepal, and
yay!
Yeah, and Uruguay. So, if you're one of those three individuals, if you're one of the one, let's throw out a couple more. We have one listener in Vietnam. So if you are our only listener in Nepal, Uruguay, Vietnam, or Cambodia, just, send us a little note to say hi. I think it's kind of neat. I want to say hi.
That would be really cool.
Yeah. And then tell a friend. So when I check our statistics next week, I want to see that we have 2 listeners in Cambodia. That's our goal for next week.
That would be really cool. I love that.
And don't try to game the system by downloading the show twice. I'll know. Tell a friend.
Oh, that's so exciting.
All right. That's all the stuff that I had on my notes that I wanted to talk about today. So, unless you guys have any other questions, I think we should probably let Chris get back to hiking.
Oh, yeah. Chris, you want to go do that hiking thing?
Do that hiking. Well, I have to tell Megan something that I've discovered on the trail, a gift that I like to give to people when I meet them. And it usually happens in the morning. I make my coffee, and people just start noticing it. And they're always like, what is that? What is that? And it is Nescafe Taster's Choice Hazelnut. And I just hand them a packet of it and go, here, try this. And anytime I run into them again, they're like, that stuff is so good.
Ooh, hazelnut coffee. Flavored coffee has a higher caffeine content than like dark roast coffee. Mm-hmm. So I'm all about the caffeine.
You're like the...
Not while hiking, but...
You're like the Johnny Appleseed of hazelnut coffee.
People, I haven't had anybody yet be like, oh, no, thank you. I don't want it.
Who's going to turn down
Stop giving
free
me
food, let alone free coffee? Oh, I didn't drink a lot of coffee when I was hiking, but I'm certainly an addict in my muggle life.
There you go with that muggle business again.
I know, that muggle business. So weird.
All right, guys, this has been a lot of fun. It's getting pretty stinky here in the blanket fort, though. I need to go take a shower.
Oh, yeah, you must be really disgusting. I need to go do something outside to justify the amount of sweat on my body because I've just been sitting here. So, need to do that.
Chris, let's definitely do this again. This is always a hoot.
Yes. Well, thank you both so much. You were very gracious with your time, and I appreciate talking to you. And together again.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Sounds good. Have fun out there.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Stories from the Trail is a production of thetrek.co. Zach Davis, editor-in-chief. Your hosts are me, Gary Sizer, a.k.a. Green Giant, and Megan Thompson, a.k.a. Voldemort. Our music is by Lee Rosevere. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review wherever you download the show. And of course, please consider supporting the show by visiting patreon.com/storiesfromthetrail. The show is recorded, mixed, and edited by me, Gary Sizer, here at Blanket Fort Studios, which is just me in my basement with a blanket over my head. Thanks for listening.
Ooh.
La 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 la.